a first-of-its-kind survey asking about the sex abuse scandal, women becoming priests, Pope Francis, and other issues.
You're asking them their opinion. You're asking them how they feel. I thought it was very, very positive.
From clergy to laity, we hear from the insiders working in Catholic churches throughout the United States. Some church critics are skeptical of the results.
Are women equal to men? If the answer is yes, then they should be ordained.
When I got done looking at that, my first thought were, these people are going to hell. Who took this? Because they're lying.
I'm Mitch Blocker with the NBC10 investigators. The Catholic Church, it's faced multiple challenges over the past decades, none more so than the clergy abuse scandal. We wanted to get a better understanding from inside the church, so we partnered with NBC Universal-owned television stations and their investigative teams from across the country. We sent emails, including surveys, to more than 32,000 church employees. 2,700 responded. Here's what they told us, as well as the local reaction.
He was an instrument of God to teach me about sex.
At 13 years old, Mark Rozzi says he was groomed, sexually abused, and raped by his parish priest.
I would have done anything for this priest to let him know that I was this good kid.
Rozzi is now a Pennsylvania state representative, an advocate for sexual abuse survivors, and a critic of the Catholic Church leadership.
If I have to take my church down brick by brick and rebuild it in the true eyes of God, so be it.
A national NBC-owned television station's investigation surveyed 2,700 Catholic Church workers across the country. When asked if their parish or organization handled the clergy sex abuse scandal properly, 82% said yes.
Some of the results in there were just disgusting, really, to me as a victim, that, you know, how much they were like, oh, not our institution. Yes, they handled the sex abuse problem fine. Is that a joke?
Since I've been a priest, we have been through very, very dark times as a church, but also most beautiful times as a church.
If Rozzi is trying to take down and rebuild the church, Father Kevin Gallagher is working to hold it together. The pastor of St. Denis Parish in Havertown was ordained in 2002, the same year as the major Boston Globe investigation.
So for my 18 years, the scandal has been on the Richter scale completely.
Including Philadelphia grand jury reports in 2005 and 2011, and the latest Pennsylvania Attorney General grand jury report last year, all detailing sexual abuse by Catholic clergy.
Now we have the horrific details of abuse, which were gut-wrenching to me as a priest and scandalous to the people.
In our survey, 39% of Catholic Church employees say sex abuse or misconduct is still a major problem, while 46% say it was never more of a problem than in other fields that involve the care of kids.
The actual priest abusing children, I think, is very low in that number. The handling and the fallout, I would say, is still very much a reality.
Father Gallagher says the church has improved its vetting processes for new priests.
I think our response was at times very slow, staggering, stumbling, but I think our awareness now of the horror of pedophilia and the horror of boundary issues and these crimes is so much more apparent.
While 1 in 4 of the workers who say someone in a position of trust at their parish or organization was suspected of abuse of a minor in the last 10 years, the majority tell us the last suspicion of abuse was more than 20 years ago.
When I got done looking at that, my first thought were, these people are going to hell. Who took this? Because they're lying.
Rozzi acknowledges the church is doing a better job of reporting sex abuse.
They're trying to do the right things. I get that. But that won't atone for the sins of the past. They need to be held accountable.
Governor Wolf has signed Representative Rozzi's bill abolishing a statute of limitations on childhood sexual abuse. And the clergy abuse scandal, it has affected membership in the church, but membership, it was already dwindling before news of the scandal broke. According to the Archdiocese of Philadelphia's news website, between 1990 and 2018, mass attendance was down 52%. There are also fewer priests. So there's some questioning whether or not it's now time to ordain women.
And let us pray.
This sounds like a Catholic Mass.
God of all creation,
It looks like a Catholic Mass.
the body and blood of Christ.
But Eileen McCafferty DeFranco is not your average Roman Catholic priest. The Vatican doesn't allow women to be priests or deacons. Yet, here she is,
Our God be with you.
saying Mass.
Lift up your hearts.
McCafferty DeFranco says she was ordained with other female priests in 2006.
Who trespass against us. Our ordination is valid, but the church considers it illicit. Great churches.
She had become disenfranchised with the male-dominated church, so she helped start her own.
I think of Catholic with a small c.
An unusual step, but one taken, she says, because of gender roles in the Catholic Church.
Are women equal to men? If the answer is yes, then they should be ordained.
Our survey found overall Catholic Church employees say no when it comes to ordaining women. 58% say it is settled doctrine. When you break down the question of ordaining women priests by gender, 45% of women believe the idea needs further study. Just 38% of men who answered felt the same.
The vast majority of the people said that the priesthood for women has been settled for all time. So, I mean, there's more nails in the coffin.
The church employees said they are more open to women as permanent deacons. Overall, 60% say it should be considered, with 55% of men and 62% of women in favor of further study on the topic.
The way of being nice about the whole thing is said, oh, we're just going to study it. They're not going to study it. There is no room for women at the top in the church. The way the church is configured it now, there will be no women priests.
Can women imitate Christ? Absolutely, and they do it heroically every day. But Christ the priest, Christ the minister, is reserved to men. I'm not the author of that revelation, obviously, but
you believe it?
I do.
Father Kevin agrees that there are not enough priests, but doesn't believe ordaining women is the answer. He points to the roles women already play in the Catholic Church.
They're just beautiful, beautiful women who want to serve this community. They're doing that. My personal experience is they do such an effective ministry that we can't undermine that or confuse their role with that question.
Globally, it's still a taboo.
Villanova University professor and theologist Massimo Fagioli told us the United States is one of the countries facing a priest shortage. According to the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, in 1970, the U.S. had nearly 60,000 priests. In 2018, there were fewer than 37,000. Academics list celibacy and the sexual abuse scandal among the reasons there are now fewer priests. But Fagioli doesn't see the church letting women become priests.
The major difficulty is that the two popes, Paul VI in the 1970s and John Paul II in the 1990s, explicitly prohibited that, saying that this is a definitive teaching of the Catholic Church.
But deacons might be a different story.
Because in the ancient church, we had women deacons.
In Romans 16, Paul writes, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church. Pope Francis has asked for more study on female deacons. He also wants to look at allowing married deacons in the Amazon to become priests.
So the issue of married priests is a false problem in the sense that in the Catholic Church, there have always been, in 2,000 years, married priests, because in the Catholic Church there are these 23 Eastern Catholic churches that always had married priests, and so they're Catholic priests.
When it comes to allowing married men to be ordained as priests, our survey results show 65% of Catholic employees are open to it.
Would people trust me as much as they trust me today? The trust that I believe I've worked for and earned in this community as the shepherd, as the pastor, as a priest. Would it be the same if I was married and had my own family? I don't know. And it's a question I wrestle with.
Some cities in the next 20 or 30 years are essentially going to run out of priests. So the handwriting is on the wall. God is telling you something different needs to be done.
Eileen McCafferty DeFranco doesn't believe changes will come in her lifetime.
In Jesus' name we pray.
So in the meantime, each Sunday, it will be the tale of two masses, one sanctioned by the Catholic Church and the other not.
In the name of the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Holy Spirit.
According to our survey, 86% of the church workers believe that the church's teachings are consistent with those of Jesus, and that may have something to do with their loyalty to Pope Francis. He is no stranger to Philadelphia, often looked at as progressive and willing to discuss controversial topics. It was a memorable moment. 2016, Pope Francis visiting Philadelphia. From the Pope Mobile to kissing babies on the Parkway to saying Sunday Mass.
The family.
His visit to Philadelphia was certainly a celebratory moment.
Since being elected Pope in 2013, Francis has been vocal on many social issues and sometimes controversial. He's called unfettered capitalism the dung of the devil. When talking climate change, he is quoted as saying, "God always forgives. We men forgive sometimes, but nature never forgives. If you give her a slap, she will give you one." And when discussing immigrants, he wrote, "Some consider this a threat. For my part, I ask you to view it with confidence as an opportunity to build peace."
People that I would never even expect in our parish community to speak about the Pope speak about, "Did you hear Francis said this?"
Father Kevin says the Pope has had an impact on his congregation, even if the pontiff's stances are raising eyebrows.
He really has endeared himself into the daily conversation, into the regular conversation of our people. So I think his impact has been tremendous.
In our survey, Catholic Church employees in the United States like what they hear from the pontiff. When it comes to capitalism, 55% agree with Francis. On the environment, the number is 75%. And on immigration, 74% of the people who took the survey are with him.
If you work for the diocese, you have to take a vow of obedience. So you're going to spout the party line.
Eileen McCafferty DeFranco isn't surprised church employees said they agree with their boss. She has her own opinion of the Pope.
I mean, he's a breath of fresh air in very many ways, but he has a blind spot where women are concerned.
Pope Francis seems to be supportive of ordaining women as deacons, but not as priests. That's something that's also reflected in our survey.
What he called women the strawberries on the cake, and he's worried that if women are ordained, that they'll be consumed by power. Obviously, that's what the men are, but it doesn't mean the women are going to be that way.
I think he's in a tough spot.
As an abuse survivor, Representative Mark Rossi wants to see more from the Vatican. Of the scandal, Pope Francis wrote, "We showed no care for the little ones. We abandoned them. It is essential that we, as a church, be able to acknowledge and condemn with sorrow and shame the atrocities perpetrated."
I think he wants to help victims, but at the same time, I think he needs to protect the church. And I think he's having a moral conflict issue there.
Father Kevin says even while dealing with controversial topics, Pope Francis is connecting with people, whether they agree with him or not.
He radiates joy. And a part of joy is unsettling for people. A part of the joy of the gospel, he places the challenge of the gospel, and that's why some people are saying, well, I don't like what he says here, and I don't like what he says there, and I don't like, but the joy is infectious.
And you can see more from our Inside the Church survey at NBC10.com, as well as our free NBC10 app. There you can see how church workers answered questions ranging from birth control to same-sex marriage and more.